I can't stop now.
Otis Redding was the ultimate soul voice of the American South, but he'd had to fight for recognition.
I feared no man when I traveled with Otis Redding. I feared no man as long as he was by my side, no matter where we were.
When we came to the UK, and Otis felt it because he had been through hell, he was treated like a human being.
Otis discovered a new self-confidence when he toured Europe in 1967. It would change his life and music and inspire those who saw him.
When he came over to England, I just stood in the wings watching him, you know, and just picking up pointers because he had a style.
It was Road to Damascus for me. The whole evening blew me away, and that's really when I decided that this is what I wanted to do, you know.
In the early days, I would always try and sound like Otis, and in doing so, that developed the voice that has become my own. Like all great singers, you always think they're singing for you and just you alone.
In 1965, before he'd even arrived in the UK, Otis's records had gained an almost tribal loyalty among some British teenagers.
Most of the dancers would have been termed in the modern world as mods or modernists. They were very interested in anything that was R&B and of course they always had the best rhythms to dance to. It was a very cool thing to dance to Otis records.
I was a bit of an anorak when it came. I think Britons were anoraks when it came to soul music. A lot of soul musicians and artists were more popular over here than they were in our own country and had a bigger following. Those kids were fanatics. They knew their stuff. They really knew their stuff. There's the Otis Redding type of soul coming out in that time is priceless. It was just peerless. It's never been bettered.
But his record covers at that time didn't feature Otis, so his British fans neither knew what he looked like nor where he came from. Neither did Otis know anything about his mod fans in Britain. That same year, he was busy travelling America's Deep South with his Otis Redding Orchestra, expanding their loyal black fan base. It was a time of segregation and prejudice.
I feared no man when I traveled with Otis Redding because I knew that Otis Redding was one of the best slingers there was around. If you ever saw him in action, you would wonder why he didn't pursue a fighting career, because he was very, very, very good at it.
He was an overcomer. He did not allow anything to stop him. He did not allow anything to throw him off from his pursuit. He did not believe in it can't be done.
But Otis had this lovable personality that even if you were a prejudiced white person, you probably ended up having respect for him when you walked away, because he was that good at handling people.
I looked at Otis as an older brother. I always assumed he was older than me because he had so much more streetwise, and plus he was a big man. He was 6'4". I was 6'8", and he kind of towered over me.
You really had to push him up against the wall and force him to get into any type of fight. But if you did, you were going to get a whipping that you would remember the rest of your life.
The black clubs of the so-called Chitlin circuit were a tough testing ground for the rough-edged 23-year-olds from Georgia.
Otis Redding was as a vocalist. If you took a little Sam Cooke and a little Richard and poured it in a jar and shook it up and poured it out, you'd get Otis Redding. Because he could croon ballads just like Sam Cooke, and he could scream and jump around it with all the energy of Little Richard. That's what he had. He had that roughness and he had that real softness too.
Just like his hero, Little Richard, Otis was living in the small southern city of Macon in Georgia. Macon was a mixture of the Devil's Playground and, at least on Sundays, the Lord's Stomping Ground.
His father was a minister. They were brought up in the church. Of course, I didn't know Otis then. So he had a strong religious background because he had to go to church every Sunday. He had to sing in the choir. He had to, he was that little boy that go to Sunday school every day. So he always knew that God was on his side because he was raised that way. He loved to talk about the church and how he used to sing in the church as a boy.
So I sang spiritual songs in my father's church at the age of, from about 7 on up until I was grown, and then I started singing rhythm and blues. It's the most important part of my life. My background is the most important part. In order to sing the blues, you got to feel it, so it all comes from the heart.
We met really with him performing locally at a theater on Saturday mornings with a talent contest. He's down in Alabama, shouting never, never. Way down in Louisiana, well, nobody's gonna set him down.
His father, he didn't want him singing rock and roll, and but Otis bought his father a brand new Ford when his father was preaching, and Otis had started having real success. He wanted his daddy to be proud of him. I don't think his daddy ever saw him perform.
But he believed in himself, very flamboyant, very sure of himself. So we got married in August 1961. And at that time, my oldest son was 9 months old. Otis really always believed that he could do anything that he wanted to do. He wanted to always prove to himself, I can do this. And his dream as a boy, when we met, he said, oh, one day I'm gonna be rich. I said, whatever. You just need to get a job and let's get a life here.
So the 19-year-old took a string of low-paid jobs, starting as a pump attendant.
Otis was known to keep a job a week, long enough to get one paycheck. All right, and but he knew from a very early age that he wanted to be a singer, and that was the only thing he wanted to be.
What did you do before you sang? I used to be a well driller. For water wells, something? Yeah. Not oil? No, not all. I didn't have that much experience. I did water wells,
How did you get to be a singer from being a well driller?
Well, I was taking a friend of mine to Memphis, Tennessee to record a record. I think it was Johnny Jenkins. And I took him up there. They paid me to take him. I think they paid me about $10 to take him up there.
Just hired you as a driver?
Yeah, just to drive him up there. And so when I got there, after he finished the session, I asked him to let me do a song called These Arms Are Mine. And the record came out, and it was a pretty big record.
So the driver got the hit out of the session?
Right, that was it.
These arms are mine. They are lonely.
This soulful ballad, borrowed from Johnny Jenkins, became Otis's first big hit among R&B fans.
these arms of mine, they are yearning for wanting you.
Discovery had been made. It was like, I guess, if a miner is sifting through dirt and he sees a diamond, he's changed. It's never going to be the same again.
But the success of Otis's early recordings was still mostly limited to the black population of the South, and he would struggle to cross over during the next 4 years. During that time, all his songs would be recorded in a musical oasis deep within the racial turmoil of the South. Stax Records in Memphis.
When you walk through the doors of Stax in the morning, it was much like walking into church. There's a feeling of calmness and a feeling of safety. You just feel protected. We were integrated here at Stax from the very beginning. Outside the door was racism, but we had our oasis internally. We didn't see any more than what was on TV, or, we know it was going on, but it did not happen at Stax. There was no color at Stax, period. You'd have me, Al Jackson, and any of the African Americans. We'd have to go back to our communities and hear what we heard there, but then you had Steve Cropper and Duck Dunn. They'd have to go back to their communities and be called nigger lovers and all of that. But we'd still come here integrated in the bowels of segregation.
They were drinking out of the same bottle, passing the bottle around the room, and to me that was something that I'd never witnessed ever in my life. You just it was just taboo at that time.
A convergence of that many strong energies creates something new. It seemed like we were infused with a togetherness. When we walked in the door, we became a unit. And it was nice, because you could relax and enjoy it. The music was great. It was a privilege.
Hey, man.
Hold on. Take two. Stay in on the mic now, Steve.
An almost intuitive songwriting partnership had developed between Otis and his studio band, the MGs, in particular with guitarist Steve Cropper.
Otis kept trying to tell me a horn line that he wanted. And he was going, fa, 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 I want fa, 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 fa. So what? So his sound of the saxophone was that breath on the reed again. Fa, 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 fa. And I said, that might be a song in that. Fa, 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 fa.
Y'all's turn. He says, it's your turn, and we'd play. And that's what we played back to him.
The horns were there, everybody pitched in. There's no question about the teamwork that was involved in recording this.
He communicated with us with his fists and his body, and he would sing parts. And we communicated with him by understanding and playing musically what he was singing.
It's a happy song. Sweet music, honey. It's the night. Tell the story. You got your message.
Otis enjoyed a flow of hits into the R&B charts, but neither his managers, Phil and Alan Walden, nor Stax, had cracked the pop market, despite their links with powerful Atlantic Records. So they turned their attention to the packaging.
The problem was, in America, with the racism there, to put that black male on the cover would turn off everybody from radio to consumers. So let's find attractive girls and put the girls on the cover, because that kind of minimizes that problem when you hear the music and you're looking at this beautiful girl and hearing Otis sing like he's singing to these women. Then he thought it would be easier, and it was, to get product positioned in store and to get it sold in the marketplace.
Stax were also testing the marketplace on the other side of the Atlantic, where their girly covers helped get the music to a youth market hungry for the authentic sounds of the Deep South.
When the albums came out, he wasn't on them, which was really rather odd, but that was a strange marketing thing from a lot of American companies in those days, is not to have a black man on the cover of your record. But Otis Blue was a major breakthrough. It really broadened the market for his music.
And then pop songs whose words you think are really good. I mean, a lot to you. You know, to say very sincere.
Yeah. Otis Redding, you're my girl. But he sort of sings about something in particular. That's why we like coloured singers, you know, because their voices are so pure.
I got sunshine on a cloudy day, and it's cold outside. I've got the month of May.
The children of the 60s love that black American sound. Otis sort of sang as if his heart was in his throat, and that little torn part just pulled at your heartstrings. I think you could totally relate to him. He was a professor. He had got a degree in knowing how to cut it.
The first time I heard Otis, I was going out with a girl called, what was her name now? Bloody hell, Jenny Rylance, and she lived in Notting Hill Gate, and she was given the Otis Blue album. Oh, it was amazing. Otis appealed to me because, especially his recordings, because it always sounded like it was one take. You know, the first or the second take that he'd use.
You knew Otis Redding's records. I mean, the way he did them, you knew them. You didn't guess on who was it. You know, it was Otis.
I don't know much about my history.
Despite the fact that Otis was gaining an ever broader fan base, the only chance of hearing him on the airwaves was to tune into the pirate radio ships, which got their records straight from Stax.
We couldn't get our music played on the BBC, and it was the pirates offshore, whom I was in contact with, that was playing and popularizing Otis Redding. And so amongst the real music lovers, Otis Redding had a fan base.
I don't know much about geography.
When Al Bell and Stax got to hear of Otis's devoted following, they sent him to Britain to test the waters.
Why is soul music the biggest thing there is in England now, in your opinion? Well, actually, I think that the English kids want to get more of the rhythm and blues music. I think they've heard a lot of the English music, and I think they want to make a little change or something and hear some of the soul music.
The audience tuning into Rediffusion's Ready, Steady, Go were astonished to see Otis in the flesh, and the choice of opening song was his surprise tribute to the British beat scene.
was the height of the mods those days, and it was a mod audience. When the camera sweeps around, it's all mods doing their little mod dances, you know. Show their mum and dads that they were there, you know.
Every song that suddenly played at breakneck speed, the dancers had to dance much harder than they had during rehearsals. But it was like suddenly the whole show was on Purple Hearts. It was great.
I wanted to see Otis Redding, and I did. So I went backstage and we had a picture taken together. There is a picture of us both. And then he said to me, that first record that I made, you know, he said, your first album, he said, every track was a single on there. I said, oh, thank you very much. You know, coming from Otis Redding, unbelievable.
Otis was familiar with the young singers who had helped spearhead the recent British invasion of the States. He invited two of the best to join him on TV.
That was the first time that I'd sung that song, and I can tell it's really a nervous me that I see on videotape. You know, it makes me wince. Wish I'd had a chance to rehearse the thing. Well, I can't say enough about his performance and about the effect that his voice had on me.
He was amazed that a white young guy could be standing up on stage singing that sort of stuff. And I couldn't ask for anything more in the world than to be asked to be on stage with him, you know, and sing.
Otis's British following was no longer limited to anoraks who bought rare 45s, and his appeal to the ladies was opening a whole new market that Stax was quick to exploit.
Because when you attract the female, it brings the male along. So yes, the target was the female audience. That was the majority purchaser of the music. And that's what who hollered and screamed on stage. And if you got the women in, the guys would be beating a path to the door to come to that performance. So yes, females, yes, females, yes, females.
Otis would have women right in front of the stage begging him to just touch him. Just touch me. I mean, I saw women stand there and cry throughout the whole song. Touch me, Otis, touch me, Otis, touch me, Otis. And Otis would just keep on singing.
Back in the States, Otis's female fans were equally enthusiastic.
Unless they get way out of line, I have no problem with it, with what was going on. You got a nice-looking husband, and he looks good, and nobody wants him but you. You got a problem. He looked too good, but somebody said, well, I don't want Otis Redding. Good-looking man. Very good.
Otis Redding sang so pitiful and so pleading to the women. He knew how to beg the women and make them feel good about it.
That's my name now. They call me Mr. Pitiful, and that's how I got my name. But people just don't understand what make a man sing such a sad song. Ooh, when you lost everything, when you lost everything that you had, can I explain to you? Lost everything I had.
the women definitely loved Otis to no end. I mean, he was this Mr. Sex Appeal out there on the road.
I was not the wife that always wanted to be on the road or always in the way. I was the wife want to be there to do what he wants me to do with the kids, take care of the home.
Otis had celebrated his success with a fine new ranch outside of Macon.
Just being on the ranch when he was home, it was just like magic, because Mom was very rigid, structured, very much a disciplinary, and where my father was run through the house, have fun, just as long as you guys don't fight, do whatever you need to do.
You know, he wanted to be a real farmer, and his dream was to do that, and he did it.
Shrimp. What you call me? Shrimp. You don't wear continental clothes or Stetson hats.
Such was his celebrity by 1967 that Otis filmed a jokey promo as a laid-back farmhand.
Otis dutifully stayed humble. He would be quick to pick up his own bag, or he wasn't looking for someone to bring him a glass of water, or he stayed down low with his music and with his attitude. And so then he just immediately became a king.
Remember me. Don't ever forget me, child.
But Otis became king of the road when he left his family 4 days a week to play to his adoring soul fans.
And every time Otis Redding left off that ranch, went through that gate, one thing I knew, he loved Zelma. He loved his kids, his family. He's coming back. He's not going anywhere.
He would call constantly. Whenever, just constantly, what are y'all doing? Where are the kids? Let me speak to the kids. What did they eat? Are you okay? And Mom be like, I wish he would stop calling me. So, you know, I just, and I sit and I listen to certain lyrics and certain notes, and it just seems like their relationship. It almost seems like a storybook, like a love story of what they were going through.
I've been like a little bit sentimental, no. But she has her reason, yeah. But the soft words, they all spoke so gentle, yeah. And it makes it easy not to bear.
Otis was also romancing club-goers across the South. Among his biggest hits was an old songbook classic that he'd made his own, Try a Little Tenderness.
But it's all so easy. All you got to do is try.
Otis Redding is doing it Otis Redding's way, and this is soul, R&B, blues, jazz, all mixed in here, but this is Otis Redding. And we released it. Publishers sued us. The publisher sued us, went to get an injunction and a restraining order on us to prevent us from releasing that record. The argument was that that performance was going to damage Try a Little Tenderness.
A subtle racism still pervaded the music business. This 1930s ballad had been covered by established family favourites like Crosby and Sinatra.
Try a little
Otis was now threatening the song's pedigree by transforming it into hot Southern soul.
There was a problem with black male artists because of historically what was happening in this country and how the largest segment of society viewed the black male.
Otis had made his own statement about the institutionalized racism affecting him. He'd recorded Sam Cooke's A Change Is Gonna Come.
Just like this river, I've been running ever since. It's been a long time coming, but I know, change has gotta come.
Otis believed that he could do more for his race through music than he could by being out there in front of the crowd holding signs and doing the boycotts and the pickets and things like that.
There were all kinds of obstacles that Otis faced in America coming from Georgia and in Georgia itself. Throughout the South, the racism, the segregation, which was painful because we were hated. And we're treated like animals.
Naturally, if you went into a restaurant and you were refused service, or another particular case, the guy wouldn't let him stand near a heater in the store and send him back to his freezing cold car because he didn't want the black man standing in his service station. Those incidents naturally hurt him, but he had a way of knowing how to handle people in that particular situation.
So Otis and the MGs were only too happy to depart the mean streets of Memphis when they and a select group of Stax's singers were sent on a tour of Britain and Europe. Though this was Otis's second visit to London, many of his companions had never been outside the Deep South. The trip would affect their lives in ways they'd never imagined.
That's why I sing these happy songs. They go dum dum diddly dum dum.
Well, we got there early in the morning, and it was really quiet. The airport was quiet, and we were trying to figure out how we were going to get to the hotel, and so we were all out on the sidewalk, and the limousines pulled up, and they said, "Oh, these are the Beatles' cars, and they're loaning them to us." So we all got excited, got in the limousines, and were ready to be taken to town by the Beatles.
Otis had even recorded a frenetic version of the Beatles' Day Tripper to celebrate his return to Britain. This was the first time the MG's studio band had ever gone on the road with Otis.
There was no way I could have guessed that the number of people would have been there to greet us, and to greet us with such enthusiasm and such knowledge about who we were and what we'd done. It was moving.
Now that just overwhelmed us in a very positive and dramatic way because these were white people. And it was the white people in America where we had racism and segregation that were thumbs down, if you will, on us. And here we were being embraced by white people in the United Kingdom and throughout the whole of Europe as we traveled through Europe. It gave us a different perspective on ourselves. It increased our appreciation for ourselves. We didn't know that our music was appreciated and loved that much because it had been a fight, and it still was a fight in America to get it played. But then to come and get off that plane in the UK and see a field and a rose garden of white people, a flower garden, loving our music, and at the concerts and the performances people interacted, we could not believe it. It changed how we viewed ourselves, and it gave us more confidence.
It is now star time. I'm talking about the man that sings Pain in My Heart, the man that sings Shake, the man that sings Satisfaction, the man that sings Far Far. I'm talking about the star of the show, Mr. Otis. Run it!
Otis was like a ball of dynamite, and he was like your friend up there, but oozing confidence, oozing love. Magical stuff.
The English audiences were the most energetic, responsive crowd we had ever seen. And so we were turned on by that, you know. I mean, they got the most out of us by feeding us all that energy.
The tempos were faster, the energy higher, the band more together than ever before.
The musical togetherness never fell apart. It's like we were dictated that we were going to be simple, we were going to be straightforward, we were going to be funky, we were going to be good.
We were blowing people away. We get up there with this dynamite band and just blow people out. And of course, Otis Redding is like, holy Mark, this guy's a monster. In England, he was definitely the king of soul, without question.
The Stax Vault Tour introduced many of the label's top artists, all in one show. They travelled England, Wales and Scotland, often doing 2 performances a night. Otis always topped the billing.
The more pressure put on him, the harder he worked. There was no relaxing, wherein we could relax because we weren't headlining. We had a lot of fun, and crowding and carrying on.
He called home at least 5 times a day. I said, "Are you enjoying yourself?" And he said, "I'm having so much fun over here, but I am really getting a whole new audience here." And to see back then in the 60s that it was a mixed audience with blacks and whites, that just blew him away.
Cold and wet, but they loved the people and they were learning about the food.
And you could see them looking at each other like, are they ripping us off? Are they ripping us off?
In 67, a lot of the places in England were sort of still on the ration kind of mentality, very small portions and all that. And here comes these guys that can just eat anything you put in front of them. I remember on the road, and I have some Super 8 film of this, we stopped the bus to get gas and stuff, and we all ran in this little grocery store on the road there. And Eddie Floyd found a can of pork and beans and ran on the bus and said, guys, you can't have any. I never will forget that. Something so small but so important.
Come on now. Happy song. Happy song.
From having to go to the back to get food or not be served at all and have different restrooms and all of that with white America. And all of a sudden you go to a country and you're interacting with 100% white people and none of that is happening. It's like you've gone to heaven. Europe changed us. It gave us another perspective on life.
Do it again.
The Stax Folk Tour rambled around Britain, then Europe, and built to its climax with a return visit to London. The final shows would be a triumph that would profoundly affect the lives of the many budding British singers in the audience that night.
It started off with, give me an O, give me a T, give me an I, give me an S. And then Otis came out. And he only sang for 20 minutes, 30 minutes, that's all he had to do in those days. But he was a big man, and when he came on stage, you knew he was there. In the early days, I would always try and sound like Otis, and in doing so, that developed the voice that has become my own.
I thought, God, that's great. He had a quality in there that you felt. You knew it was coming from his heart when he sang. But even though I was heavily influenced by Otis Redding, I still tried to do it my own way.
It was a great learning curve for me. I mean, I took a lot from him, you know. He would like do it, ow, something like a little scream. You would employ that in your own repertoire, you know. And I still do it today. Thank you, Otis.
It's just feeling this huge energy force, you know, of great music played with such flair and verve, and it was just incredibly inspiring. I thought, well, is anything you can do to follow this? And I sort of found something that I could do, and but I'm not sure whether I would have done any of it if I hadn't been there that night. So interesting. Everybody wanted to be round Otis. Everybody wanted to be part of that scene, that Stax Folk Tour, because it was the excitement of everything that had come up from the previous 5 years right there on stage for everybody to see.
And it dramatically changed Otis because his self-image and how he felt about himself changed, and it allowed him to be freer in his performance of the music, and because the confidence was there, and that's what the UK gave us. It took Stax and Otis Redding to another level.
But the very success of the tour would not only dramatically affect Otis Redding, it would also lead to the disintegration of Stax Records.
When we came back from Europe, we thought of ourselves differently. We were somebody in Europe. People recognized us on the street.
Everybody came back a superstar. They went over there as just a struggling musician. They all came back in their heads as superstars after 17 days. That was very difficult to deal with.
So we began to think of ourselves as bigger stars than, as somebody who deserved pay.
Were we getting the right numbers with us on our statements? What is Atlantic getting? What is Stax doing? Those kind of things. Who's cheating whom?
It's a painful reality, what Sam was talking about there. Very painful.
So, basically, the team started splitting up. So, it was meant to be. You know, I guess written in the stars.
And there was more than a little jealousy towards Stax's superstar, who seemed aloof from the problems engulfing his colleagues. Otis returned home to his 400-acre ranch and adoring family, and his future looked secure.
I remember him coming home from London, and I had this poem, and I said, I want you to take this poem. I missed you so bad while you were away. And he took it, and he said, you're not a songwriter. I said, okay, I just wrote a poem, but it was all about him and how I missed him.
On a promotional video, Otis playfully showed how all his childhood dreams had come true.
He didn't have a college degree, but he had common sense and he had a gift. And at 26 years old, he owned a second airplane and a 14-room home and 400 acres of land. He always would tell me it ain't how much money you make, it's what you do with the money you make.
We realized after coming back from the UK and Europe that our music was accepted and appreciated. So I started with more persistence, creativity, and vim and vigor, if you will, going after white radio stations in America to play our music. We knew we had overcome. It was just a matter of being able to figure out a way on my part to market it to the masses where they could hear the music.
Al Bell made sure everyone knew about the triumph in Britain, and Otis finally began to cross over to the mass American audience. On the West Coast, flower power was blossoming, and the first big pop festival at Monterey offered him unpaid the chance to play before a mainly white audience. He grabbed the opportunity.
But Otis was not supposed to headline Saturday night. The Beach Boys, who dropped out at very close to the last minute for many reasons, and Otis became the headliner.
Otis told the MGs, do it like we did in England. 30,000 hippies were enthralled by their intensity and togetherness.
The impact was unbelievable. Otis got to their soul. And Bob Weir of the Grateful Dead, who said he thought he had saw God on stage that night.
This was the first pop festival to be shown in cinemas, and Otis was portrayed in an almost spiritual light by the director of the Monterey movie.
He captured on stage exactly what was happening at the festival, and he's shooting right into the lights. And what he was hoping is that Otis would cover the light so that he wouldn't have that in his lens. Once he saw what he had, he stayed with it. At that moment, you realize that Otis is enjoying the performance as much as the audience.
Can't stop now. Your love is growing cold. My love is growing stronger as our affair grows old. Ooh, I'm loving you too long, and I don't want to stop now. No.
He got in back at our home about 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning, and I said, well, how did it go? He said, I killed him out there. I got him. And he was so excited, you could just see it in his eyes. And he felt so good that he had reached another audience that he did never think he would be able to reach.
In the British Melody Makers September 67 poll, Otis had astonishingly dethroned Elvis Presley as the world's top male vocalist.
You can rock me, baby.
He was now ready to return to Stax and consolidate his meteoric rise on vinyl. But a worrying problem intervened.
He started work again in the studio, and of course his vocal cord got messed up. And he was just kind of upset about everything, and words weren't coming out right. Strength wasn't pushing the notes out right.
But he had polyps, which was a vocal cord condition where you develop these nodes on your vocal cords. So he couldn't sing for 6 weeks, and he couldn't talk for the first 2 weeks. We were all scared to death. You really did not know what the outcome of it was.
And that was 6 weeks of remarrying again, because it was a lot of time spent together with me having to see about him and he getting all upset because he couldn't speak.
He couldn't talk, and he was writing on pads, and I think that frustrated him. I remember him getting, a little frustrated that he couldn't speak.
People spending my money, Lord, and I just didn't care.
Yet it was a time of creative outpouring for Otis. He sketched some 30 new songs during his enforced silence.
I can remember the little bell that he would ring for my mom, and I can remember her saying, I'm so sick of that damn bell, But he had time to think and to organize his goals, where he wanted to be, where he wanted to go, how he wanted to reinvent himself.
And he would sit and listen to the Sgt. Pepper Lonely Heart. He loved it. He said, these guys are so ahead of their time.
I saw the
Sgt. Pepper's was a major influence on him writing Dock of the Bay. It made him open his ideas to a more broader pop audience. In fact, when he did Dock of the Bay, I was very upset by it. I did not like the song. It sounds very stupid today since it placed number 7 in all-time history of music. But I thought Otis had steered too far from his own style.
Otis had been clowning around, and if you ever hear the outtakes, he's clowning around trying to do a seagull sound in the front of the recording. And he sounds like a crow, not a seagull.
sitting in the Sitting when the evening comes, watching the ships roll in, then I watch them roll away again.
Otis was in a period of self-discovery, and I think that's why the introspective lyrics there on Dock of the Bay, and I think he was finding a much bigger part of himself.
It was all Otis. It was all about Otis. It was just something about the rhythm of that song that made it a little more popish than a normal R&B track.
Look like nothing is gonna change. Oh, how everything still to stay the same. I can't do what 20 people tell me to do, so I guess I remain the same.
And when I first heard it, it was so sad to me because he felt as if he knew something was going to happen. When? Nobody knows. But if you listen to the message, and it's just something was going on in his mind.
I left my home in Georgia. I headed for the Frisco Bay. I've got nothing to live for. Look like nothing's gonna come my way. So I'm just gonna sit.
Before he'd even finished recording Dock of the Bay, Otis headed out to a gig in Wisconsin, across the freezing waters of Lake Monona.
Sitting on the dock of the bay,
The phone rang and someone on the other end said he's gone, and I can remember my mom dropping the phone, running down the steps, and going out the door with no shoes, pouring down rain, and I ran up the driveway behind her.
When the plane crashed, you don't know where you're going to go. You really don't know what's going to happen.
And she was just hysterical. And I just ran out with her because, you know, I didn't know at the time that it was death, but I knew something tragic had happened.
I remember jerking the phone out of the wall, you know, like, oh no, you know, tore the whole phone out of the wall. And I just knew it was true. And going out to see Zelma and finding her in tears and her saying, oh, you know, he might be swimming. And it's just like, Zelma, I've been told this, no way.
I'm sitting on the dock of the bay, wasting time.
Ironically, Otis would achieve in death what he'd never been able to manage during his short life. Dock of the Bay went straight to number 1 on the pop charts and sold 4 million copies worldwide.
Otis was soulful from the heart, and he made it raw, and he made it gritty, and he made it powerful, and he made it strong, you know. To me, Otis put the S and the O in soul.
And with Otis, it was about his music. It was about singing and performing great and making those people feel good. He lived for that. He lived for that.
Give a little, take a little, and let's give a little heart just to cry a little, yeah. That's the story of, that's the glory of love. So, brothers and sisters, you ought to know what I'm talking about, man. Cry just a little bit, yeah. just a little. And let that old wind just blow right on by. That's the story of good old glory of love. I still know what I'm talking about, y'all. When this whole world gets tired of us, we'll have each other and only child. When this whole world get through with us,